It's time to begin. My name is Jess. If we haven't met before, I am from Design School here at Canva. So without further ado, I shall introduce Pete. We're super excited to have Pete come on board for his first Design Makeover session. So I shall hand it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Pete. I'm really excited to kind of get to know the community. I've seen a lot of all your amazing work in the chat. So thank you firstly to everyone that put some designs in to have a look at. I've been designing for a while now. I noticed that we had a couple of newbies, so I might take it nice and slow. I'll talk through everything that I'm doing and it should be lots of fun. So excited. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 designs. I tried to pick 3 different designs to go through today, so they're not all exactly the same. If you like this event and you'd like to see more events, there's other design makeovers that are live and you can use the QR code here and jump on.
This is where you'll find all of the listed webinars for the month ahead. So as Pete said, if you want to tune in for more design makeovers or check out all of the other webinars that we have on offer, this is the place to go, designschool.canva.com/events. And I'll pop that link in the chat as well.
All right, so let's move on to our first design. So this was sent in by Sandra. There's a lot of stuff going on here in this design. I thought there's a lot of room in this one to kind of do something cool with it. So I'm going to jump over to Canva now. The first thing I look at when I look at this is there's a lot going on here. And I think that sometimes when we all start designing, or I do this a lot, we think, all right, let's try and make everything awesome. So we go, all right, we're going to put an awesome picture in. We're going to do something cool with the kind of duotone background there. We might do a really awesome background, and we're going to make the text awesome. The thing with that is when you put so much awesome in, it sometimes is a bit too awesome for the eyes. We need to kind of maybe pick one of the elements out of this that is awesome and then simplify the rest of it. And by doing that, by simplifying some of the design work around those elements, it really enhances it. So the thing that I really liked about this was this actual, so this has obviously been made with the background remover and we've cut it out and we've used some of the duotone. I thought that was really quite creative. So I'm going to actually copy that and use that for my design. I'm going to pop him down there and I'm going to just straight away put just a nice plain background on the back. So I'm just going to jump up here. I'm going to pick this nice blue just to get started. And sometimes I'm going to zoom out so I can kind of see what's going on. The other thing we want to look at as well is I always like to think, what are we designing when we get started? It looks like it's got the Sam Manuel Elementary School. So it's a school, it's a grade 4. So we're showing that he's in grade 4. And then I assume this is the name in the background here. So it looks like it's like a student card. To me, I would think about the hierarchy of this and what's important. If you think about like a baseball card and you saw a baseball card, you want to know the person's name. That would be the most important thing. So we're going to do the name and make the name an important aspect. So when you look at it straight away, you go, oh, okay, that's the person's name and here's the photo, so it matches. Now, because you've used a nice kind of funky text in different areas, I might pick something a little bit more interesting for a text. So I'm just going to jump over. I'm going to put a headline in. Ooh, I'm on that page, but I'll copy him out of there and pop it down here. I'm going to pop it up using my guides. And what's a nice font? Maybe Gatwick. Really like this font. First name, because this is actually a flattened image on the top up here, I can't actually grab the type. So you just might have to bear with me while I type some things. So first name, I'm going to do ice. Drag that across. I'm going to drop down for the second name. The reason why I'm using 2 boxes here is because I'm actually going to do something a little bit interesting with the name. So we'll drop this surname in. I'm going to align these to the left because I'm using the left align. So what that does is if I have it, I could have it centered or to the right, but for this one, we want it kind of hard aligned to the left. So I'll drop that in there. We've got the name in so far. I think it's a little bit small, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So I'm just dragging it out. Also think that white's going to look a lot better and really pop on that blue background. And what I wanted to do with this was I thought, let's do something a little bit interesting. I'm going to like reverse this so we've got a stroke outline. So the way we can do that is we can go up to effects, we can go to hollow. If you can see, that's kind of made it separated the 2 names out. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting. Grab those, play with the size a little bit. So that looks good. And then the next thing I'm going to look at is what else is important here. So the first thing is the name. Then I think that's obviously grade 4, something that we're quite proud of because we've done it quite big here. So I'm going to drop the name down. So I'm just going to copy this down here. I'm going to type in grade 4. It's quite big. So we'll make this smaller. Like that looks quite nice. Now, I'm starting to think that we might make him a little bit bigger. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of, as I'm going along, I'm visually looking at it and I'm saying, okay, let's try and balance. So it's kind of like a 50-50 rule here. I'm looking at half of this page, it's going to be the photo and half's going to be the text. So the next thing we need to do is put in the type for the school. Let's grab the school name. Sam Manuel Elementary. Just let me type that out because it's quite a big word. You could pop it like that, but I sometimes with like secondary text, I kind of like to sometimes put it on its side. I think that we can maybe fill this gap in here. And if we wanted to match in the middle, we could put the top of the box at the bottom of that text, the top of the box there. And then that's put it in the middle. I think it's quite big. I might still just go down a little bit. So I might put in 15, go down. And then I might add a line just because I feel like lines generally can be used to make things look better. So let's put this around to 90%. Now with the line, it's going to be quite hard to see here, but I'm going to zoom in so you can have a look once I get it nice and straight. It's got curved ends on the line at the moment. Now, the type is quite hard. It's got some hard edges. So I think that the line will look better if I go up here and change the end of the line to be a square line. And then you normally want to just make sure that your line, you can do this by going up and putting on your rulers. If you want, you can drag down a ruler and you want to match the end of the word and the start of the word with the line. And then what that does is it just visually makes it look nice. I'm thinking this is probably going to live on Instagram or something like that. So I sometimes zoom out just to have a look at it and imagine what it would look like on a phone. I think that's a good start for this one here. As I'm going along, is there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, we do actually. We had 2 questions about the effect that is on the image of the boy and whether you're able to show us how to do that.
I actually didn't do this effect, but what's actually happened here is it's grouped at the moment, and it was quite there's a lot going on in this file. So what I might do is I might just duplicate this so we can break it up. So you can see that there's multiple images. Now on each of the images, so on this background image, we go to edit image, there's been a duotone put on this image. So if I was to delete these in the background, and if I just copy an image out, and then I go up to edit image, there's a whole bunch of different duotones. So you can see that one's the one, I think, from looking at it, it's been used, but you can do a range. You could have it in green. So these are all the different duotones, and it would also work quite well if you were going for something, so blue works nice with green. So if we picked a nice green background, I'm just going to pick and then if I was to change these to bear with my slow clicking. So by changing the actual color of the image and making a duotone, you could imagine that if you were going for something a little different, like there's quite a large difference between the way they look. And if you were running an Instagram and you wanted to do one for different grades, you could do one of the grades in this color, you could change the duotone to another, so you could start to categorize your grades by the colors. Duotones are kind of a great way. If you've got a range of colors, a range of photography that isn't in the same color realm. Like say there's lots of pinks in one and then there's lots of blues in the other, but you want it to kind of look uniform. If you put the same duotone on all of the photography, it will help bring it together and look like it's all part of the same thing. But yeah, so that's the way that this original one was done, was just by duplicating the image over and over again, and then you kind of stack it up. But I quite like it just with the single one there myself. Any other questions?
We do have a question from Rahul. Which font did Pete use for the word ice?
Yeah, so this one's Gatwick Bold. And I just picked it because it's quite an interesting looking font. It's quite funky and new, like, you know, quite modern. And the reason why I picked that over like a standard plain serif font is because I kind of was looking at this and I was like, Sandra looks like someone who likes to put a little bit of funkiness into their type. So that's why. But yeah, it's called Gatwick Bold. Now, our second design that I'm going to be looking at today is by Chris. Chris had some really good designs using the background remover tool. When I actually picked this one, I didn't realize there was so much going on. So Chris is definitely very talented at building things with lots of shapes. So I'm going to take this one and try and simplify it a little bit so that maybe if we were going to use this, if you were doing a whole range of them and you wanted it to come together a lot quicker, and kind of one of the benefits I think of Canva is that if you simplify the way that you work, you can do things really quickly. And it's one of the real selling points of Canva is you don't have to jump in there and spend ages on something. So I'm going to duplicate the page here. The first thing I would do when I look at a design is I'd go, okay, so what's important on here? So obviously the photography again on this one is important. We've got the brand. So maybe potentially the brand is Rosetta Steps Education Center is the brand that's using this as advertising. So they want to make sure that that's at the forefront. If you ever do design for anyone, the first thing they always want is their logo big and bold for everyone to see. The other thing I was looking at on this one is we've got a quote from Plato. The first thing I thought when I looked at this design was, for me, I think that maybe the actual quote might be better to be in bold than the actual person's name. What I'm going to try and do in this design is I'll show you how it's built up at the moment. So Chris has kind of built it up out of a whole bunch of shapes. So he's started with a square and he's built it bit by bit. We've also got a drop shadow, which I don't think you can see there, but I noticed that the curve down the bottom here doesn't match. So I'm going to try and then there's some other bits and pieces. So I'm just going to start by really simplifying the design down. I'm going to drop everything out. And then I'm going to look at what I think Chris probably was thinking. He was like, okay, I want a shield. So the shield, you know, represents education. It's kind of a symbol that everyone knows. So I'm going to go over to my elements. I'm going to go to my lines and shapes. I'm going to look for a shield. And there's a shield here. I'm going to drop that in. I'm also going to make sure that I can see my margins, because I like to see where I'm placing things in. Red's obviously not the right color. We can see that. So I'm going to use the blue that Chris was using. I'm going to pull out the actual shield. I'm going to have two different typefaces here, I think. So this is going to be my nice bold typeface. Let's have a look what we can use. We'll try Chivos bold. And at the moment, I'm just going to hard align this to the left. I'm not sure about that one. I might try just narrow this for now. We can fix it up. Another thing that people tend to do is we go, okay, so we want to make this look like a quote. So maybe we could use the quotation mark as a hero item itself. I'm going to stack it like that. So I'm just going to duplicate here. This one to the right. all my text. Okay, I want to pick a funky quotation mark. I know I used this one the other day. Sunborn, I know that's got like the kind of curvy, make this up nice and big. Back. Okay, so I've kind of started pulling that together like that. Now, the other thing as well is I feel like having the logo up the top here, because to me, this looks like it's going to be a perfect Instagram post, like a nice square. I'd like to have it maybe in the actual box here, but it's not an SVG, so it's a JPEG. So this is where you can use the image background remover. So Canva will do its magic for me. And I've got the logo there. And then if I press R for a rectangle, I can bring up a box, and I'm gonna use the top of this shield as somewhere for this to sit in. Okay, and then I want to actually make the most of the whole frame. I want that white one to come with it. Bring this young lady up in size, make it nice and big. Across and maybe into that. And I think that's starting to really, like, if you were to see that, maybe we could use a slightly bolder text if you want to make it. And the spacing in that is quite large as well. So I'm going to bring that up a little bit there. And bring him up. There we go. I don't want to cut off the hat. I think something like that would work really well as an Instagram post, and you could change the shield color again if you wanted to. So if orange was a more on brand color, you could change it so you've got that. So you've got, you know, there's a couple of quick versions. And I think let's just move that over just a touch because I'm finessing with it. But yeah, so I think that by what I've done here is I've called out the quote. So the quote's nice and big. It's really easy for us to read now. I've used the quotation mark as a little bit of a graphical element in the design. The author of the quote is less important than the quote itself. We've made the brand stand out, so the brand kind of works overall. And the images, if you were to scroll through your Instagram, that you'd stop at that because it's nice and bright right in your face. That's my thinking behind that one. Is there any questions coming in as I go through this?
Mamta did ask in the first design how they made the photo of the child curved at the bottom. Was it, did they insert it into a frame or how that was managed?
If we have a look, it's been done by putting shapes over the top. There's actually colored shapes over the top of the child. If you see, like that.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
The reason why I thought maybe, because it's not clean on the bottom here, like you could probably do something like that, but I feel like it's cutting off the paper, and the only way it would be quite difficult to cut out just the paper. You could probably do it if you're finessed enough in background remover. You could cut out the child again, put them in, and just remove just have the hands and the paper, and you could put that back over the top if you wanted to do that. But I feel like that's getting into like really quite advanced use in Canva. It's not going to add that much to your design. So sometimes I think about like the efficiency of my time versus what it's going to add to the design. And it would look, definitely, if you spent the time finessing and getting that in there, it would look good, but you could probably pop out another 5 of these in that time, different versions to pick from. And you might actually find sometimes just from doing them. If you do multiple versions, there might be something that you've done that you like better than your original idea. So I think it's always good to kind of get a pen and paper before you start and draw up a couple of ideas and then try and make them kind of quickly. Don't spend too much time finessing it straight away. Just get it so you get it to a place where you like the look of it generally, and then jump in and finesse it. To answer your question, he's kind of done it by layering shapes on top of the image.
Fantastic. Yeah, that was interesting. So mum to ask that question says, thanks very much. Yeah, I do think the new design looks better where it's like fully popped out. A question from Dion. So this is more of a theoretical question around color pairings. So Dion says, can you recommend any color theory tips or a cheat sheet? I would never have put that orange with the pink cap and gown, but it works. So any insights there?
Yeah, so like I've tried to stick pretty close because I didn't want to redesign everything from scratch. So I've tried to keep the colors to what the original designs were. I think that when you're picking colors, it's always good to look at what other artists have done in the past. And it doesn't necessarily need to be another design, but you might look at a painting and see how an artist has pulled together colors that are unexpected and they work together. You can look at photography. Sometimes you might be out and people on Pinterest, people are, Google Images. There's definitely color theory that you can look at and you can Google, and it gets really nerdy and you can figure out about how you want, like there's different types of colors. The more you work with color, the more you kind of learn pairs that work really well together. So blue and orange work really well together. But I think that experimenting, like this is the dark background here, I think is actually what's really helping the pink. So the pink's popping off the page now because it's sitting on a dark background. If I was to change, I'm going to change this one back to blue. And if I was to change the background color to a lighter color, let's maybe put a gray, it will lose a bit of its emphasis. It will kind of drop off. But the beauty of having Canva is you can just kind of pull up, these are the default colors, and then you can kind of jump in and do, make your own color if you want. So you can just kind of, sometimes I'll just go, okay, I want a dark, I don't know, maybe a dark purple. So I'll kind of get in the realm and I'll just drag my slider until I find a color I like the look of. Don't forget that your designs, you can throw them away if you don't like. I go, okay, actually, I really don't like that. You can throw it away. It didn't cost me anything. You can make as many copies as you want. It's not like getting out your paints and painting something. You can try it in 5 different colors, find the ones you like. And then if you do find colors that you like, you can kind of start developing your own style as well. Like a lot of artists will have particular color palettes that they use. Once you get more deep into design and into branding, like brands, like you think about like Coca-Cola has a red that they use with everything. Over here we have Cadbury, which has a purple they use with everything. And they've found colors that they can partner with that work really well. So you'll start to build out your own kind of color taste as you go. So that was a very long-winded answer, but short answer, there is design theory. And if you just type color theory into Google, you'll find a whole bunch of different things. And you can even just type in color palettes into Google and you'll find different things. You can type color palettes of movies as well. Like I love Wes Anderson movies. If you just type Wes Anderson color palette, you'll find ones from each of his movies and you can eye drop them. But yeah, there's a lot there.
We've only got one more question on this design, Pete, and that's around the drop shadow that was behind the little girl on the top design. Is it an element or is it an effect? Do you know?
I think it might be an SVG or a PNG just with a transparency on there. To do that, you could potentially use, I'm going to type shadow and see what comes up. Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Look, there it is. So don't be afraid to type things into the search bar and look for things. Like I had no idea that existed. You can see that's the exact shadow there. If you're interested in doing things with shadows, sometimes shadows can make a design look a bit complicated. So it's nice to keep your design clean. You can do things with gradients. So you could grab a gradient. Okay. Let me just duplicate this. Let's say that we didn't have the shield and let me just bring this back down for a sec, and we didn't have that, and this was, you can use gradients on top of photography as well to give it a little bit of, sorry, this is just me going completely rogue. You could, start to, just have a play. Like, this is not groundbreaking what I'm doing. It's not gonna, win an Oscar, but it's, you start to have a play. Like, I think that it's really important when you're designing to not be frightened, to have a play and start to have a bit of a feel of what might work. And, it's, that purple is not the right choice on that gradient. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what would work. So I would have to, see if I change that to white, the logo works a lot better. I could say, all right, well, we've got some dark colors in the collar there that could come out. So I could use a darker color. And then if I went, okay, so let's not pick pink. We got blue in the logo. Maybe if we would have put the blue over the top and bring it up a little bit, I could squash it down. Doesn't look amazing. You can just have a bit of a play around and find what works. Maybe something like this could work if that rocks your boat. Still think the original design that Chris did was a lot better, but there's no penalties for having a play and having a fiddle. So gradients and shadows, that's kind of how I'd be using them.
Awesome. That wraps it up for questions for this design.
I might just jump straight over to our design 3. Rodriguez has sent in this design. Now this one was cool because we have an animated element to it. So we've used the background here, which is animated, which is, you can imagine this would live really well on Instagram or Pinterest or something like that. It's quite simple. We've got a quote. There looks like there's this floating element in the background that's been put there. I think that that's probably been put there to try and bring out the text. So what I might do straight away is say, remove that. If you remove that, you can see straight away it doesn't, you've lost it. So I think that the quote again is the really important thing. So maybe if that copy was like this. Again, it's quite an interesting font. I think it's actually got a drop shadow on it. I'm going to put, what should I use? Maybe a grande. One of my favorite. It's a nice big font. I don't personally like the echo style, so I'm actually going to take it off because I think it will make it harder to read. Sometimes putting the effects on your fonts can make it difficult to read. I'm going to drag this down a little bit. So at the moment, I'm just working out my hierarchy of the design. I want the actual type of the quote to be quite large. And it's very difficult to read at the moment, but I'm going to drop, by pressing R, I'm going to drop a rectangle onto the page. I'm going to go up, and this is a little trick I like to do a lot when I'm trying to make sure that text pops. Let's go up to the transparency. We're just talking about transparency. It reminded me of this. If I put a transparency on that, now, because the background doesn't need to be the most important thing, and I might put well, it's not the right color. Let me put a darker color there. Take this down a little bit. So you can center the back by right clicking, or I've been using the shortcut, but I'm on a Mac, so I press Command and the square brackets, and I'm sending it back, and you can see things start to pop forward. And then I'm going to change this one to, I think I picked that one before, but I might pick a nice bit of a smaller one, a smaller typeface, because the type pair, we might have this as our nice big bold and this clean. I'm going to set that to white as well, so it's easy to read. I'm also going to chuck my margins on so I can see where the center of the page is, which helps me a lot. I think that probably would look better if both of these were in white. I don't think they need to be big. I'm going to start thinking about the balance. So at the moment, I'm going to balance this with this top element with this bottom element. And then the actual quote is going to live in the middle and be our hero. If I was scrolling through Instagram, I would be able to read that a lot easier. Do you have any questions so far? And that was a really quick one. I kind of flew through that one.
We do have a question from Fernanda. What is your go-to tip to make words pop out from photo backgrounds?
So I think that having a dark background with the light text on the top always works. So like having the lighter element on the top, like you could see as soon as I put the darker element in the background, it really made that easier to read. And it looks quite nice even just as a single slide by itself. The other thing is picking your typefaces. A lot of the time when we pick typefaces, we look at them and we think, oh, that looks really cool. And we don't think about it in terms of a paragraph. So like this handwriting, you might think, oh, look how amazing that looks. But when I actually select it, the legibility of the actual type is gone. And we've got to remember, particularly with a quote, we want people to read it. And most people are flicking through Instagram really fast and they don't have a lot of time to kind of stop and look at that. Although cursive can look beautiful, I just try and pick nice, bold, legible typefaces, clean. Personally, I like sans serif fonts, which are the ones without the little serifs on them. But traditionally, you can find some really nice traditional serif fonts as well that will make it look quite elegant. Looking through the popular fonts at the top is always a good way because a lot of people have done experimentation and you've kind of done the hard work for you. But just when you're looking through the window, instead of thinking about what font do I like, think what font is easy to read. So like I can see this Code Pro, that's easy to read. I can see this one at the moment is quite difficult to read. And then when I click it, it's no surprise that it's difficult to read. And then if you were to add on top of that, if you were to pick a bad color combo, so like if I was to pick a color that was too close to the actual background, you start to make it really hard for the user to read it. I think just light colors on dark backgrounds and dark colors on light backgrounds. I'll just show you that. You can see that the light color on the dark background works really well as well. So light on dark, dark on light, contrasting colors.
We have a question from Donna about font pairing. So this is a popular topic, I find. Any tips on how we can properly create preset font styles? So something that maybe you might set up in BrandKit, and any tips on which fonts go together so that you can do that?
Whenever you're thinking about type, you got to think about how you're going to use it. So if it's in a brand, you might have a headline type that you use for headlines. So that's going to be your slightly more interesting typeface. Always try and pick a typeface that will pair with it for, we call it body copy, but if you just think about it as like kind of like a paragraph or type that you'd use. So say I pick this typeface up the top here and I'll also drop it in there and then headline. So that might be our interesting headline there. And then we would want something that's going to be legible and easy for people to read. So I know that Open Sans is a nice, easy to read typeface. And if I take that off bold and bring it down a lot, so you can kind of see that there's a nice contrast between the two here. We've got the nice bold headline and then we've got the supporting typeface. So I think trying to pick two typefaces that are not too similar, you don't want them to be similar. If you were to pick another really interesting typeface and you had two interesting typefaces, it wouldn't work together. So I personally, whenever I'm picking something for a brand, I always think about it as like almost like my hero typeface. And then I think about my working typeface, the typeface that's going to do all the heavy lifting for me. It's going to be easy for people to pick up and read a magazine. It's going to be easy for people to read copy when they're on Instagram, things like that. You could even just set up a document and just set it up like this if you're picking some things, and you could go through and just maybe don't just write body copy because it's a bit boring. But if you were to type out something a bit more interesting, and then you could go through and select some different typefaces and then compare them. So you might say, okay, well, let's have a look at that in Horizon. And then, you know, you could maybe pick something that looks this might be a bit of a funkier a brand. And you can start to see which ones are working and which ones you're happy with. So I think, again, just having a play, trying to pick a clean and a interesting typeface, and just not being afraid to jump in there and have a test. Trust your gut. Look at what other people have done. I make mistakes all the time. You know, when I start a design, I'll throw away 90% of my designs before I get the one that I like, because I'm constantly manipulating and doing different things and trying. And then I get to a place that I like. There's a common joke for designers the whole way through. You're going, oh, I'm terrible. Oh, actually, that's pretty good. I think I'll pick that. That's good. So everybody feels that.
We have one more kind of higher level question, really about your process, Pete, when you're doing a design makeover like this. So Rifki's wondering, like, how do you decide where to start when you do a design makeover? So maybe you have like your top 2 tips when you look at a design. Is there something that you assess first, or what are your top 2 tips for making over a design?
I think that you need to think about the person who's going to be looking at the design rather than aesthetically if it's beautiful. If something's completely beautiful, but it doesn't tell the message that you need it to tell, it's not going to be successful. So the thing in terms of design for me with that is hierarchy. So finding what's important on the design. So when I looked at this first one, I was like, the name. It doesn't hurt to write down a list, to write down, you know, what's number 1, what's number 2, what's number 3, so you have something to refer to when you go through. The way that I thought about this was, the name was the most important, then his grade of his school was most important, and then the school itself was the third most important thing. In terms of the text, if I put all of the type the same, it would be very boring and you wouldn't be able to, it would just lose its meaning. I might have interpreted that wrong. That's why asking questions to your clients or whoever you make the design, right? Because this might be really important, just grade 4, maybe they want the whole thing to be grade 4. You know, maybe I completely misinterpreted that and got it wrong. In that case, you know, maybe they wanted it to be just a huge, you know, maybe I could have based my design around number 4. That really quickly changes what you look at. No one's going to look at that straight away and think of the school. They're going to eyes go straight to that. So yeah, hierarchy is the first thing I think of. And then the next thing, someone once said to me, I don't know the actual quote, so I'm going to murder it. Coco Chanel used to, when they put all the outfits together, they'd put all the stuff together and then take one piece off before they leave. And that's how you pick the perfect outfit. So I think that going back to design, sometimes it's better to just have the one amazing piece that you put into design and take some of the other stuff out. So simplifying it. Starting simple, you can always make something more complicated, but starting simple is a really good way to get your design going. So they're the 2 things that I would look at.
And that pretty much wraps it up for today. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to you, Pete. Thanks for a great session today. We appreciate all of your design insights and the beautiful designs you created. And thank you to our community for joining live. We really love having you here live during these sessions. So thank you for coming on board today. So if you would like to have the opportunity to have one of your designs reviewed by one of our designers, you'll need to submit your designs through the Canva Design Circle, which is our Facebook group. Super supportive community. So if you're a Canva lover, that's the place that you should definitely go and join straight away. Lots of tips and tricks in there. People give their designs to the community and ask for feedback. You'll hear about new product releases and things like that. But it's also where we put the call out for designers to submit their designs for this show. We hope that you got lots out of today's session. I'm sure you did. And we look forward to seeing you at a future Canvas Space webinar.